we are here to talk about a baseball team that has lost 11 consecutive games, a last place team that is off to their worst start in what is it, since 1983, Rich? So in 43 years. Not at all jarring when you put that stat out there that 1983 is 43 years ago.
7 years before I was born.
Only 5 for me. So that's the context we're looking at. I run out of adjectives. I run out of declarative statements, Rich. This is the worst April that I've ever experienced as a Mets fan. This is one of the worst stretches, one of the worst starts, one of the worst organizational runs that I've ever seen. And it's like little stuff. Like, you could quibble with manager decisions, and we'll talk about Mendoza. You can quibble with, we obviously are going to talk about the offense and how ice cold and historically bad it's been. But like little stuff, like the way they dealt with the Polanco injury and calling up a third catcher and then never using said third catcher. And it just seems very poor across the board for everything. That's the best way I could put it. Very bad for everything. And yeah, I've talked a lot this week, Rich, between the midweek show. You were actually out in LA during a portion of this terrible, no good, very bad week. I just want to give you the floor, man. How are you holding up? And just what is your reaction to one of the worst stretches in Mets history?
I'm glad that I didn't waste any of my evenings in LA going to see this team play baseball. I'll tell you that much. I thought about it. It was going to be pretty difficult with my schedule, just shooting a show for YouTube. And I was just like, you know what? I'm already really tired. This team's not playing well. And I was rewarded by not going because I clearly missed nothing. And that continued. Excuse me, against the Cubs, dealing with a little bit of a cold that I think I got while flying back yesterday. But man, this is just unbelievable. And I listened to the pods that you did while I was out, and I think you said it so well, and I think it's in one of the social clips that we recently put out. Like, it's not even just about this April. This is like almost a year now of bad baseball since that infamous date we talked about last June 13th. The Mets are 45-70. That is the second worst record in all of baseball. That is worse than the White Sox. The only team that has a worse record than the Mets during that stretch of time are the Colorado Rockies, who are like 10 games worse than that because they're just a garbage organization. But we can't really talk about that, can we? Because the Mets payroll is what, like 5 times of the Rockies and the White Sox. And hey, at least the White Sox got Munetaka Murakami, who's fun to watch. There's nobody fun to watch on the Mets right now, at least not on the offensive side of the ball. And it's crazy because you and I went into this season with, I would say, pretty good optimism and high hopes. You picked them to win upper 90s, I think. I picked them to win in the mid 90s, despite what had gone on last year, despite a very trying offseason at times. And the fact that, like, generally speaking, I usually skew more towards the pessimistic side of things, but trying not to do that so much. And this team is really testing me and testing my mettle with that right now, because like you said, it's not even a subjective thing that you said of, oh, this is the worst April I've ever seen. Like, usually we say stuff like that and it's like, it's just on vibes and feels, but like statistically, this is the worst start to a season the Mets have had since 1983, which is 3 years before they won their second World Series. It was the year that they got Keith and Gary Carter. I don't see those types of moves coming. If anything, I'm wondering who's not going to be on this team by the end of the year if things keep up. And I'm surprised and I'm disappointed and frustrated. And for it to be, we're live here on YouTube right now on Sunday, April 19th, for it to be that early in the year and for me to already kind of hit this like apathetic stage where I actually kind of laughed when they blew the save on Sunday and eventually lost their 11th straight game. that is not good. And I am very curious what these crowds are going to look like when the Mets come back to Citi Field this Tuesday. I don't know how many people are going to show up. And the ones who do, the mood is not going to be chipper. That's for sure.
So correct me if I'm wrong. Did Gary put out there the 1983? I'm double checking it now while we're talking, but I believe what the Mets did after that 7-15 start was call up Darryl Strawberry. Like, that's the big move they made to try and inject some optimism into this team. Yeah, they were 7-15 and they called up Darryl Strawberry. That was something to look forward to, right? Like, oh my gosh, who cares about what their record is? We get to watch what is hopefully going to be the next superstar to build around. And, you know, I was going through some of the history of all these big losing streaks, and it's funny. You have the one in 04 that happened after that season fell apart. And in most of these cases, they're about teams that held on for a while, at least as far as Mets history is concerned, teams that held on for a while and then just let go of the rope. And then you have just like all the 60s teams that got off to terrible starts. The 1962 Mets, I believe, have multiple streaks of at least 10 losses in a row. Jeff Passan put out there that the last team, only 4 teams ever have lost 10 games in a row in a season and made the playoffs. The most recent one is last year's Cleveland Guardians, who lost 10 in a row. The 1951 New York Giants, they lost 11 in a row in April. So they lost 11 games in a row starting April 19th, ending on April 29th. There's a doubleheader mixed in there too, and still ended up making the playoffs. The other 2 teams are the 1982 Atlanta Braves. And weirdly enough, the 2017 Los Angeles Dodgers that went to the World Series and won 100 plus games lost 11 games in a row in September. So it was a very weird, that's like, talk about the anomaly. That's the one that stands out. I'm having a hard time looking at the history here and still appeasing myself and appeasing anybody else with only April. And I mean, I'll give the floor back over to you. Just how bad is this start and some of the numbers that coincide with this 11 game losing streak?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, like, aren't you just sick of having to like look at the stat and be like, it's only April and blah, blah. Like, they can dig themselves out of this historical hole. Like, yeah, they did that in 2024. How often do teams actually do that? Way more often than not, these teams start off really bad and then they can't ever catch back up from it. I look at the Braves last year, who, yeah, they had a lot of bad injury luck as the season went on, but they started 0-7. I think they had a huge couple of weeks. It took them about 2-3 weeks to get to 500, but you exert all that energy just to get back to 500, and then they fell right back to, 10, 15, 20 games below, and we're just never able to catch up to that. You have to play like 650 baseball for an extended period of time just to undo the damage that you've done. And I'm kind of tired of relying on these like historically anomalous runs to undo the horrible start that this team has gotten off to in 2 of the last 3 seasons now. And then last year, obviously, it was the inverse of that. They're the best team in baseball for 3 months, and then they're dog shit the rest of the year, and they're still dog shit now, despite the fact that they've changed almost everything about this team other than the manager and a couple of all-stars. It's a completely different group, and just seems like it's like more the same, losing in maybe a slightly different font. They don't even hit the occasional like home run anymore. It's just ground out, pop out. Like,
I gotta say, the Michael Barron tweet, from the weekend, where he pointed out where they rank in like 10 different offensive categories, and then added, oh yeah, they're 11th in K percentage. Like, they're putting the ball in play. Everybody wanted them to stop hitting so many home runs and have so many swing for the fences hitters. The ball is in play. They're not getting a lot of hard contact. They're not getting a lot of like line drives or barrels. And when they do, it's right at them. Like it's right at fielders right now. You put some stats on the rundown that as far as how bad it is, like how bad is this offense right now?
So during the 11-game losing streak that the Mets are currently on, they are averaging, it's really unbelievable, 1.7 runs per game. They have scored 2 runs or less in 9 of the 11 games during this losing streak. They're batting 200 as a team, 537 OPS as a team, 17 total extra base hits.
It's insane.
And to boot, hitting 145 with runners in scoring position. On top of that, I went through the stats through every box score of the last 11 games. The Mets have played exactly 100 innings during this 11-game losing streak. They have held a lead for 11 out of the 100 innings. They have been tied or trailing in 89 of those 100 innings. So they are just like completely non-competitive, lifeless, and as boring as I can ever remember this team being. It's as bad as you could possibly be in April. Like there's nothing else to even say. Like other than Nolan McLean, who gets DeGrommed now every time he gets on the mound, there is no reason to watch this baseball team. And it's April 19th.
Can I add another stat to this?
Please.
So during this stretch, they've hit 6 home runs. 3 of them came in one game. Like
how many
they
of
did
them
the
are
sledgehammer
from MJ Melendez?
Right. Like MJ Melendez goes. So here's the funny part is like the sledgehammer thing that they do now. I didn't know they did that. I genuinely can't tell you whether they've been doing that all season or not, or whether they just came up with it. It's like, listen, we'll do this for home runs now. And I don't know if this was an idea they had a week ago and then they just decided, we'll wait until our next home run. And they just haven't been hitting home runs. The power is non-existent. I mean, we don't have any numbers for it, but just your eye test, if you're watching Mets fans, you know, the defense has been pretty shoddy. Especially first base. I've had some very dark thoughts over the past 11 games, specifically the past week. Rich, can I go through like some of the places I went to this week? What do you got? You got another stat?
Not a stat, but just one thing before we get into, I guess, the meat of this week's episode. You knew it was bad when about a week ago, like maybe a day or two after our last show, which was recapping a 1-5 week. Who thought it could get worse?
Yeah.
But Will Salmon puts out an article that was breaking a little bit of news that was titled, "In Need of an Offensive Jolt, Slumping Mets to Call Up Outfielder Tommy Pham."
Yeah.
You should have known then. If you didn't, you figured it out in a few days. Like, again, I think I referenced this at some point in the offseason. It's the Step Brothers scene where it's like, okay, now the tuxedos kind of seem fucked up. Like, if you're calling up Tommy Pham for an offensive jolt in the year of our Lord 2026, you might be cooked.
Yeah. Yeah.
You might be cooked.